Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tark Talks for Welcome to the February 2020 Tark Talks, the show where I go over some of the news from last month that I thought was interesting, and I give you my light thoughts on them. Let's start by revisiting, or rather updating, one of the first stories I ever covered on one of the first official episodes of Tark Talks. The Sonic movie launched, and despite some mixed response, with some folks claiming it was too much Carrie being Carrie, and others saying it was the perfect amount of classic Carrie, it went on to break box office records. Not huge records, mind you, this isn't one of the highest grossing movies of all time or anything, but in the small world of video game movies, it became the highest grossing of them all, even outperforming Detective Pikachu. I seen the movie, and while I wasn't exactly blown away, it was okay. Kind of just okay at best. I think I still preferred Detective Pikachu and of course the OG Mortal Kombat when it comes to video game movies, but that said, there was some genuine comedy throughout the film and some kind of interesting action set pieces. Sonic, for as obnoxious of a character as he is in the video games and original shows, was toned down a little bit, so he just comes off as more like a kid with ADHD than some obnoxious wannabe suave and overly confident cool guy. They sequel baited the hell out of the end of the movie, and I'm gonna echo a sentiment that seems shared across a large portion of the internet right now. It seems like the sequel is set up to be much better than this movie was. New characters arriving seem really promising, and the new characterization of characters who are already in the first movie just look like they can take the series to the next level. I do feel like the directing and editing was lacking, and the music score could have borrowed more motifs from the game series, but for a video game based movie it turned out pretty good. It just didn't have that much special going on. It didn't quite have the level of charm of Detective Pikachu, nor anything close to its awesome atmosphere and set design, even if most of that awesome atmosphere was just the result of using a lot of purple and blue lights. And for what it's worth, purple and blue lights, you know, cheap trick, overrated. Pretty sure only hacks would use it. Unfortunately, as much as these records should encourage studios to maybe invest in more video game IPs and adapt them properly and faithfully, we have another movie on the horizon that could set us back yet another peg. The Monster Hunter movie, being directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. Shudders visibly, but actually read the action words instead of performing the action. Shudders visibly. Recently, Sony Pictures revealed some new character posters, and sure, Milla Jovovich is looking like Milla Jovovich. She's not a bad-looking girl, and her jaw-blade greatsword that isn't quite big enough still looks cool, but I have zero faith this movie will turn out any good. I just don't trust the director at all, especially after earlier production shots showed us army tanks in the desert. Maybe I missed the hunt, but I really don't remember tanks in Monster Hunter. At this point, it's looking more like Resident Evil Extinction than anything Monster Hunter related. Sure, I will see it anyway because it's the first time Monster Hunter has been adapted this way, and it has Tony Jaa and Ron Perlman on the cast, and those guys are just badass. But yeah, low expectations. Moving on from the world of film, we got some wonderful news. Some wonderful 101 news, if you will. Platinum Games have been looking for a while now into re-releasing the wonderful 101 so that its legacy doesn't live and die on the Wii U. Nintendo had offered to get it ported and released to the Switch, but that wasn't quite good enough for Platinum, and so Platinum instead set out to self-publish the game and essentially open a new publishing arm of their company. Their first goal, a meager 5.425 million yen, or around 52,000 USD, was set to get the game ported to Switch. They smashed this goal immediately and in fact made it all the way to 235,320,528 yen, or $2,234,444 USD, roughly 40 times their initial goal. This was successful enough and hit enough stretch goals to ensure releases on Switch, Steam, and PS4. In addition to this, new content is coming in the form of time attack modes, 2 new retro-style minigames, and a remixed version of the original OST. However, and this is where I'll reveal how little I know about the cost of porting and publishing games, the pricing schemes here and the goals they set look suspect as hell to me, and they make me incredibly skeptical that all the money raised is actually going towards this release. So let's just break this down. To port the game from Wii U to Switch and self-publish, we're looking at $52,000. Once this port is done, porting to the PC will cost $200,000. Now, maybe I can understand that. PC porting is much more difficult. There's a lot of variables to test for and a lot of different PC builds to keep in mind. If they're going all in here, this probably means creating newer, higher fidelity textures, lighting effects, better anti-aliasing, unlocked frame rates, etc. This should be the hardest and most expensive part of all the ports. So $200,000? Sure, I'll bite. Now that the hard work is done, we port the game to PlayStation 4. Should be rather simple considering, right? Well, apparently not. The PlayStation 4 version will cost $250,000. This is 5 times the cost of them porting the game to Switch, and I just don't get it at all. Is the Switch not getting any physical copies? I would imagine that if the Switch isn't getting physical copies, then the PS4 isn't either. I have no clue why this one costs 5 times as much as the other, and $50,000 more than porting to PC. For $500,000 more dollars, they'll add a time attack mode. And then we have another $250,000 just to remix the OST. That's 10 times the amount an average audio engineer makes in a year. Who knows? Maybe the cost to license the game to all these systems is just that high. But it doesn't feel right to me at all. When we consider still that the release dates for these ports is just this coming May, it seems to me like the porting and optimization work is basically already done. All they have to do is submit the game for ratings, print some copies if physical copies are coming, and publish. It could all be legit. Again, I'm no expert, but something just didn't sit well with me here. And the more I seen them reveal stretch goals, the more out there it all seemed. Having said all that, if there is extra money here, I do hope it's just going straight into their new publishing division, and that they can use this as a sort of jumping off point, so that we never have to see another Kickstarter from them again. I like Platinum quite a lot, but this just seemed super fishy to me, and one last time, I'm no expert, so take it with a grain of salt. Just a small update here to the Wonderful 101 Kickstarter that I discovered pretty late. They have said at this point in an interview that the Kickstarter wasn't necessary, that they didn't really need the money for the ports, and that the Kickstarter existed to gauge interest. They did also say that, the money wasn't going straight into their pockets, but it was mostly going to be used to fund the shipping and production of the physical goods, which still seems like a bit of a stretch to me, but at least we know the physical goods are going to come on time. People aren't going to be waiting a year or 2 or 4 like I was with my Mighty Number 9 physical rewards. So we do have a little more clarity on that story, but still doesn't sit completely well with me. Now let's move away from what was probably the most skeptical part of the video and onto some smaller news. We get a couple interesting announcements. A big surprise this past month, we got word that the Sakura Wars games will be returning to the West, and the trailer they launched to announce this looks pretty freaking sick. Usually when an old IP comes back after being out of use and out of fashion for quite a bit, we see a really lazy game used to bring it back to modern days. Then we see people wonder why it didn't sell very well. Well, this time Sakura Wars is looking mighty clean, and I can't wait to give it a try. Sadly, I never got to experience the series before, as it just wasn't on my radar while it was still in vogue, or at least when it was still as popular as it ever was. But I have my interest peaked now. We also got a reveal trailer for Tribe 9 from the makers of Danganronpa, and I actually don't know what to make of it at all. It's just a cinematic trailer and it looks really polished compared to their other works, but I just haven't seen enough yet to make any real comments. I'll be keeping my eye on this, as the Danganronpa team has never let me down before, and I have the opposite amount of faith in them that I have in Paul W.S. Anderson. 4 games to look out for this month, we have the big 2. Animal Crossing and Doom Eternal are both releasing on the same day, March 20th. I'm assuming most people watching this video will be more interested in Animal Crossing, but I'll level with you guys. I haven't played the series since GameCube, and despite loving it then, I just never felt the same interest again. On the flip side, despite falling out of love with Doom back around that time, I ended up loving Doom 2016, enough to even buy the collector's edition of the game after having already bought and beat the standard edition. If none of those 2 games are your speed, Dead or School, Neo 2, and My Hero 1's Justice 2 all release on the 13th, One Piece Warriors 4 drops on the 27th, and of course at the very end of the month we have Persona 5 The Royal. It is a super packed month, and it's leading right into another busy month right after. The wallets will certainly be hurting. For my recommendation this month, I want to share a creator with you by the name of Bamboo Fighting. He's not a frequent uploader and is still working on getting his sea legs a bit, and really hammering out all the quirks of his quality, but he's definitely worth jumping in and checking out. He mostly focuses on niche games, but his content types involve a bit of variety. At the moment, essayist content seems to be his most consistent, but he's not a stranger to making reviews either, or taking a look at a game that he loves and just giving you a rundown of its story. Rundowns for anybody who needs a refresher or just doesn't have the time to play a game they might be interested in. Full disclosure though, this guy did actually support me on Patreon while I had one active, but I will say if I didn't believe in his content and I didn't watch it myself, I wouldn't be plugging him here. I found him quite a while back, or rather he found me, when he commented on my Blue Reflection review. He and I walked away from the game with almost polar opposite opinions, but we still had an equal amount of love for the game. Where I thought something was weak, he thought it was strong, and vice versa. His perspective, though completely opposite to my own in this case, was wonderfully presented and really intriguing to listen to. There's no wrong opinions here, and he's been a great friend and fellow content creator to share and discuss opinions with. Alright, and with that, we have 2 stories left. Porn. Yeah, what a word to start a story with. I love porn news. Over the past month, we've seen something pretty big evolve that I guess we should have seen coming for a while. Much like we've had mocap avatars and AIs running and hosting YouTube channels and Twitch streams for a while, we now have the same thing on adult video chat websites like Chaturbate. You've probably seen her already, but this here is Projekt Melody, the world's first 3D hentai cam girl. And of course, this is the story that will demonetize the video, but we're gonna give it a go anyway. Melody seemed to come up out of nowhere one day, and gradually over the course of a couple weeks, rose to the tops of Chaturbate's camgirl list, breaking subscription records all around. This ended up causing a massive stir with some of the camgirls who use the site regularly, with many feeling the project had no place on their website and was eating into their subscriptions and revenue. I don't have an account on Chaturbate and never really tracked Melody's effect on pre-existing user bases, but even if for a moment some channels brought in less views in the shadow of this shiny new toy, I'm willing to bet that Melody will only improve the website and view rates for all the models. More people than ever before are on Chaturbate right now. This is of course putting money into the website, which will help improve tools for its user base, but it will also of course create spilling over of new users who showed up for Melody into other channels. So while sub rates may have dropped off a small amount during Melody's advent, the amount of new people on the website will easily bring more eyes to all the other models as well. Thing is, this is just the start. Melody is the first of what will certainly be many. Now that we know the viability of hentai cam girls, anybody with a beefy computer, some time, and knowledge will create their own avatars like Melody and begin to compete. As soon as a cuter, more attractive, and daring avatar with better banter and dirty talk comes along, Melody will begin to recede in popularity, and we'll start to see a lot more competition in what's already a pretty competitive marketplace. The biggest question here is how long are people going to care? I suspect in 6 to 8 months' time, not many people will be that concerned with who's doing what, and regular viewing habits will be completely resumed, as if none of this ever happened. The website overall will have a larger user base than before, but the competition itself will be dead, and the excitement over the hot new thing would be gone. I get the ladies being upset and feeling challenged, and I do sincerely hope things end up smoothing out like I suspect they will. And I do sincerely hope that they even improve to new heights following that. But this was only a matter of time. The advancement of pornography, technology, and the proliferation of digital art as pornography had long guaranteed this. There are hardworking people beyond these new cartoon avatars, and they equally don't want their revenue streams disappearing. As well, I feel you're all entitled to fair compensation and opportunity. Sometimes work just throws a wrench like this, and the best thing you can do is find a way to work with it. Don't let it destroy you. Despite how some people may act, your services will never be obsolete. There will always be an audience for what you do, and people like myself will always respect your efforts. Okay, so I've basically filled my monthly requirement of white knighting, so let's move on to the last story of the day. The Final Fantasy VII demo that was more or less leaked last month is now officially public, and I've played it, and these are my very light thoughts on what I experienced. So far, what I've seen, I feel is really promising. It looks great, it sounds great, and it plays great. This, of course, will not be everybody's cup of tea. Some people still want the old ATB system, and sadly, the classic mode combat doesn't quite scratch that itch. But this game is definitely more than just a standard remake. This is an expansion and evolution of the original in every way. There's more dialogue and cutscenes, which so far really shape out the characters better than ever before. Jessie here is becoming one of my favorite characters already, and the demo was only about an hour long. Before, in the original, she was hardly a footnote on the game to me. That said, with all of the improvements that we've got to the writing and character interaction, it's making some of the shortcomings of the original script far more apparent. Take Barrett's speech in the elevator, for instance.
You do realize what Mako is, don't you? Mako is the lifeblood of our world. The planet bleeds green like you and me bleed red. The hell you think's gonna happen when it's all gone, huh? Answer me!
He goes on, very impassioned about how Shinra and mankind alike are killing the Earth, and gives the general climate change kind of speech. Yet he does it as if he's talking to people who have never heard the terms he's using before. Now, of course, he's doing that because he's talking more to the player and for the player's sake, than to the characters who are present. And sadly, it just comes off as really sloppy exposition. Stuff like that, now that the game is fully voiced and surrounded by much higher caliber writing, might be more apparent to the average player. I do worry as well, where this game is only about a third of the original story, and is apparently just as long as the original in its entirety, that it might be padded out really bad and just super bloated all around. Of course, only time will tell. I've heard mixed reactions to the difficulty, but I don't know, so far it's seeming easy enough, so long as you understand how the combat works. Partner AI is a little dumb, but in combat I can deal with that to an extent. It's really only in the dungeon traversal that I think partner AI needs to be better.
Not too shabby.
Those are my light thoughts so far. I'm rather looking forward to the game, but don't be too surprised if I don't fillet or berate it endlessly when it comes out. I was never the biggest Final Fantasy VII fan. I always thought it was pretty good, but I've only ever played it once, and that was about 15 years ago, and it was shortly after I played Final Fantasy IX, my favorite Final Fantasy. So it didn't hit me quite as hard as it hit some other people. And that's where I'm leaving off this month. This was a very long, short episode. I actually intended it to be a lot shorter, and in editing, I've cut 3 or 4 minutes out of this. Sometimes I really just want to be able to make a 9 or 10 minute video, but it never seems to happen. So anyway, that's all for today, folks. If you guys liked the video or found it useful at all, you know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe, and share the video if you can. Links to all my socials are in the description, and as always, folks, thanks for watching. Right. Also, Reggie is now on the board of directors for GameStop. Covered.